Hi, this is Alessio. Hope you're well. Do you remember a few weeks ago when I showed you this video? And in that video, I said if Bitcoin comes down to touch this level again, this level you're seeing here, 9,300, the blue line, I said brace for impact if that happens again, because very likely we could break it. And in fact, that's pretty much what happened. Bitcoin came down to that level and then broke it quite extremely. Now, what if I told you a very similar chart pattern is happening right now on another chart that I'm watching right now? I'll talk to you about it in a few minutes, but before we do that, let me just quickly explain the reasoning behind this. I explained to you that the reason why Bitcoin could actually break that level the next time it comes to test it is because of a rule that my good friend Charlie taught me, was that the more times price comes down to test a key level, the more likely it is going to break it. In fact, you can see Bitcoin came to test this level almost 3, maybe 4 times if you want to count this level as well. So that would be perhaps the 4th or 5th time that Bitcoin came down to that level and eventually broke it to the downside. Now, let me show you this chart. So you see, guys, there are 2 charts forming a similar pattern. The first one is this chart, the Dow Transportation Index. The Dow Transportation Index, as I'm sure you probably know by now, because I've mentioned this so many times in the videos, Dow Transportation is a leading indicator for the stock market. Why? Because transportation plays a key part in the economy. There are companies that make stuff, like Apple, Microsoft, Tesla, and so on and so on. And there are companies that take stuff, ship stuff, or transport them, in other words. Transportation, therefore, is very sensitive to shifts in the economy. That's why we look at Dow Transportation. And look at this, guys. Dow Transportation is one of those charts right now that is testing a key level over and over again. Look at it over here. Coming down to test this level. Once, boom. Twice, boom. 3 times, boom. 4 times, boom. And it's not just Dow Transportation, it's also the Russell Index, the Russell 2000 Index. As I'm sure you probably know by now, the Russell 2000 is the small cap stocks. Okay, so what is interesting to me is what's happening right now in the Russell 2000. Take a look at this chart right here. Notice how many times has the Russell tested this key level you're seeing here on that blue line, this blue zone? Well, that would count as once, bounce, twice, bounce, 3 times bounce, and a 4th time bounce. So there's been already 4 bounces off this level. And guys, you know what that means?
Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs!
It means Charlie's principle is going to come into play. And guys, let's just quickly remind ourselves as to why it is that the more times price comes down to test a key level, like you see here on this chart, the more likely it is it's going to eventually break it. Let's listen to Charlie's explanation very quickly, and I'll come back and explain more about this chart.
In simplistic terms, and then I'll go through the technical level terms afterwards, but in simplistic terms, I liken it to skimming a pebble across the top of a pond. So you're stood at the lake shore and you're skimming pebbles like we all do as children, and when they first bounce on the top of the lake surface or the pond surface, they jump and then they bounce again and again, and then eventually they lose their inertia. The inertia starts to disappear, and then the pebble plops through the surface of the pond or the lake. So I always call it pebble on a pond. The more times that price comes back down to a same level, then the more likely it is going to break. So what is actually happening in reality behind that is that traders around the world are seeing that same pattern in a way, and you might have people who have been in long positions start to panic. They're thinking, oh no, it's coming back down to a certain level again, maybe I should just come out of my long positions. So you're getting people who have been in long positions starting to panic out. So that obviously creates selling because they're selling out of their long positions. And then you're also getting people who have been on the side of that market, maybe not been even in the market, who are looking to sell. And they're seeing that very pattern of subsequent bounces and thinking, okay, maybe this time it's going to break down. I'm going to start selling short. And again, that's adding pressure into whatever the market is. So if you see, I always like to see 4 bounces, about 4 in relative succession. If we're looking at daily charts, that could be over a period of months. But about 4 bounces or so, and then I start thinking, okay, this thing might want to break.
All right, guys, so as you heard there, Charlie mentioned, I think it's a very good analogy. It's a bit like pebbles in a pond. And given the fact that Russell is coming down to test this level over and over again, it means this. The next time the Russell comes back down again to test this key level, 1460 to 1455, there's a very high probability. I would say 70 to 75%, maybe even 80% probability that we could eventually break this level to the downside. And that has consequences, by the way. Back in the old days, there were some textbooks that would say this. They would say, oh, if the price is coming to test a key level over and over again, that means that level is becoming stronger. That support is becoming stronger. Guys, if ever a textbook tells you that, the only response should be this.
I don't believe that for a second.
Exactly. Which means this, by the way. If someone said to me, hey, Alessio, if the Russell comes down to this level again, would you consider buying it? My answer would be what Theo says over here.
You've come here and insulted my intelligence. You've asked me for a ridiculous amount of money. I would rather stick my head in the ice cream machine.
I 100% agree. So let me tell you what this could potentially mean. So let's just zoom back a little bit. So as you can see, I've just zoomed back on this chart. And here's what's interesting about this. Notice that the Russell, again, the small cap stocks, is forming a box-shaped pattern if you want to draw it from here. So it's kind of a box-shaped formation. You might actually want to draw it from here as well, the previous resistance there. Okay, so as you can see, that box ranges from, we can just measure this as a matter of fact, from 1600 at the highs to 1455 at the lows. It's quite a big range here, which means what? According to the laws of symmetry, when price breaks out of a box pattern, let's say the Russell here breaks out of the box formation here, the laws of symmetry dictate that there's a high probability that when price breaks out of a box formation, like you see here, that we could move to a 100% projection of that box. What does that mean? It means we could likely move to an exact dimension of that box to the downside. Okay, so if we just draw a similar sized box that we see here to the downside, that means symmetrical projection of that breakout could move us down to this level you're seeing here, 1330, 1327 range. It's quite a large downside target, by the way. All right, so in other words, guys, a breakout of this box pattern, should it happen in the next few weeks, for example, could lead to a high probability move, again, potentially 75% probability that we could move down to this downside target of 1330. However, if we don't make it all the way down there, then I think there's a very high probability we could move down to this level. I'm looking at this chart now on a 2-day, this is a 2-day chart of the Russell. And as you can see here, I've drawn this red line, that's a trend line, by connecting this low to this low. We have a trend line support right now on the Russell of 1360, which means what? If the Russell were to break that support level, then it's quite likely on the balance of probabilities we could move down to this trend line of 1360. Even if we don't make it all the way to 1330, that level could potentially hold the Russell there, 1360. And by the way, guys, if we do actually travel south to that support level, all I can say is that would be 100%
Good. Good.
Beautiful. It's totally not rad. Totally not tubular, bro.
Thanks very much, guys. Hope this video helps, and I'll see you guys in the next video update. Bye.